Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Wavemakers Podcast, where we learn more about the people in the maritime industry driving the change. Who are they behind the role that they have? So, my guest today is Hasina. She is a COO of a startup, Unitrove. But without me adding more to the titles, how would you describe yourself?
I'm definitely someone who has walked an unconventional path when it comes to my career. I'm sure I will get into the story of how I got into shipping, but I think myself, I'm very curious. I like variety. I like to learn new things and meet new people. So, I definitely enjoy getting to know new people, stories, and growing as an individual. I think that's probably a better way to describe
That is
myself.
a common theme, actually. People oftentimes who I interviewed now, they say that they're very curious and that enjoy that. And yeah, I think then it's not actually a coincidence that you end up in this industry. So how was that journey?
I haven't always been in the maritime industry. Without going into too much detail of my sort of quite diverse working history, essentially it was our CEO, Stephen Lure, that got me into the industry, I would say. I met him many years ago, and at the time I was freelancing consulting. I have specialty skills in operations, learning and development management. So I was freelancing at the time, and we met at a business networking event. And so we just crossed paths as you do with professionals, and to also at the time, especially when you're freelancing and being an independent sort of consultant, it can be quite lonely. So you build your network. And so as I got to know his work and the industry, I became more and more curious. And so after a few years, Unitrove was starting to expand and grow. So the company actually began in 2008, and the CEO and founder actually began in consulting, but then the startup age of it now is is the innovation behind the design and technology that we're doing. So as that expansion was starting to happen, then I started to come on board, work with him, and then came formally on board as the chief operating officer. And here I am today. So that's how it all happened.
And how was that jumping into it?
In all fairness, every single one of my jobs that I've had, I've never had any experience in. So I don't know why it's happened that way. I don't go looking for a new career. I don't go looking for a new job and think, oh, I'm going to go off and change completely. It's just life. But so when I stepped into this world, it was literally like stepping into a new world. Each industry operates so differently, and there's definitely a challenge to stepping into a new industry, particularly maritime. It's quite, it's an industry that's been around for a very, very long time. It's quite complicated, it's global. There are so many learning curves I had to go through. I had to understand and deep dive into the intricacies of policy and systems, and as well as the maritime industry on our niche as well, and from a from a clean technology perspective as well. So it definitely, I would say, I jumped into the deep end of the ocean, I should say. So it definitely has been one of the most challenging career changes I've done, but in all the best ways. I think it came at the right time for me. I think I also felt that with the global goals around decarbonization, getting to not only net zero but true zero, I was also at a stage where I felt that I wanted to take the skill set that I had built and apply it to something meaningful, something that I felt that I wanted to contribute to, and dedicate more than just doing a job, but actually feel passionate about. So I feel very fortunate to be now where I am, and also here in Singapore now. It's brought me here to Singapore, so I can't complain.
And was it a change for you, or maybe is now, when you get out, right, and you talk to people, um, like was when was the first time when you like went to an event or had to represent a company? How did that feel?
Oh my gosh. I think, you're in your comfort zone when you're working with your team. You're working with with the individuals, and we're a small team, and so it creates a sense of comfort. And even with the time in which I joined the company, it was during coming off the back of the COVID time. So everything was still quite virtual in terms of the interactions I was having with individuals. But of course, being the chief operating officer of the company, I was liaising with the equivalent with the companies that I would be speaking with and organizations. And so I do feel quite comfortable with people. I'm a people person. I like to talk to people. Again, curious about people. I love listening to people's stories, and it's just, you can almost live through someone else's story. And so when I'm just trying to think now of when it started to be a little bit more where events were coming back, physical events were starting to come back. And so we would take ourselves out to some London events. Some were business, but some were definitely more maritime focused. That was when it sort of hit me a little bit more that, oh, okay, this, I'm now representing, a company that is specific to this industry. And I think there was a journey to feeling confident to articulate myself correctly and feeling confident with using the terminology, being able to communicate the message of the company and what we were doing, whilst also being able to connect with people within this industry, because the communication styles are very different when you're working within different industries. And with the maritime, it's almost like another language altogether. But I think it was just to remember that you're just dealing with people. So if you could connect with people and you can have a conversation, and most of the time you're probably connecting on something not related to work. There's a detail that comes in. So I think that made it a little bit easier for me to, when I was communicating what we do as a company and representing the company, I just had to remind myself, it's just about connecting with the person and having a conversation, and then the rest will come. And to just believe in myself and to believe in what I'm doing. And as long as that is being translated and come through, then the rest will come.
Mm-hmm. And how did it change you? Like, was it anything in particular that you think was a switch inside of you and you remember it?
I think the biggest switch for me was, while I've done management positions before, essentially being, a chief operating officer of a company and essentially running the company, as we're a small team, like I said. So I have a lot of responsibility on my shoulders. I have a lot of, it's great to have the opportunity to grow a business. But I think it was right at the beginning of when I accepted to take on this role. That is the moment that I said, wow, I'm going to be committing to growing a business that is trying to achieve really big goals, contribute to decarbonization of the maritime industry. And I think for me, it allowed me to see myself in a different way. I think before I was searching for something, and I think many people can relate to at some stage of their life or career. And I'm pretty sure it's not probably going to be the last time I feel that way. But I was feeling that at the time, just before I took on this role, I was searching. And that's why I said I was freelancing, because I didn't know what was next. I didn't know what I wanted to do next. Previous to that, I was managing a hospital pharmacy. Previous to that, I was in retail management. I've worked in education. There are so many different things that I've gained from those, but I always knew that that wasn't where I was meant to stay, if that makes sense. Whereas here, I feel I perhaps may move on in the future to something else, who knows? But for now, I really feel connected. And for the past few years, I've really felt connected to what I'm doing to a level where I feel that I can make an impact in this space. So that for me was a new feeling, and it changed me in the sense of saying, wow, you can do this. And especially in this space where diversity is still growing, I feel also very privileged to be, you know, a woman in this space, a person of color in this space, but in a leadership position. And what's been great is actually that a lot of the interactions that I've had have welcomed that. And I also feel that as I go into a space, I know that I don't want to be the last of someone who looks like me or is like me to be in that space. So I also feel it changed me in a way where I felt there was more purpose just by being who I am, that it meant something just because of me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think it also depends of different regions. Like in
Yes.
some regions that is much more balanced than the others. But I also remember the stories like back in the days I was pitching to many investors, and I don't know, like a few days before that when I was practicing, someone listened to me and they were like, maybe you want to get a trainer for your accent, right? And at that point I was like, like I never thought of that being a disadvantage. And then someone like, well, you know, people get trained for this. And like it stayed with me. I tried to like not think about it, but it stayed with me. And then I pitched in front of all these investors, and it was like a demo day, I don't know, 300 people. And then the next day, I was at Starbucks ordering my coffee, and there was a person at one of the tables be like, hey, that accent you pitched last night, it was this company, you're doing this. And I was like, actually, yes. And this is this simple thing that actually makes you memorable, right? So it is this diversity that makes you stand out from the crowd. And then it is important, I think, as a startup to even get that moment, because then you get the opportunity to tell your story. So sometimes it comes with perks, and but it takes time, right, for
Yes.
us to understand that and also to internally convert it into our superpower torch, you know.
Exactly. Yeah, no. I think also times are changing as well. I do think, you know, without, you know, deep diving into it, is that before there was a need to conform more, whereas now, just like you said, it's your own identity, all these what makes you you is actually the superpower and makes you memorable and makes you stand out. And I think, you know, in today's world, there is so much. I mean, it's brilliant to see so many startups, so many people, so many. But at the same time, you think, well, how do I stand out? You know, what makes me unique? And again, it really comes back to just be yourself. And of course, you know, learn how to articulate yourself in the best possible way, but not to be stripped away of the things that make you you.
Yeah, this is also a good point when I reflect on one of the recent conversations, how especially as a startup, you get harsh feedback all the time, right?
Yes.
And there are so many times when you're like, do I
Yes.
like
Yeah.
do I modify myself or not? And I think each of us internally has to have that sense check, right? But I'm like, well, if I constructive feedback is welcome, but at some point, like, do I need to change myself in order to conform? But if I change myself so much, then I don't think I would enjoy being in this role, because it would be so different, right? I would create this, I think, dissolution, that I would dissolve myself, and then that would not be authentic to resonate with the purpose and the people who I want to work with as well. So it is an interesting one. But to keep it a bit more fun,
Yes.
but still personal.
Yep.
So if you would convert all this into a picture of yourself being a ship? Which ship would you choose to be and why?
That I would say that's an interesting one, and I was like, wait, I was bouncing between a few of them, but I would say I identify at this point in time with one of the container ships.
Uh-huh.
And the reason why is so, on a container ship, there's many, 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 there's all these containers. It's a very heavy load. So I feel right now that represents where I'm at right now, that all the containers represent all the responsibilities. And again, being in a startup, as part of the leadership team, I wear many, although there's a title, I actually wear a few different hats. So I feel all of these containers are all the different responsibilities and the load that I have to carry from A to B. Although, of course, I have an amazing team around me, there is still a lot of responsibility right now within the company as well as externally to what we're doing. So I think right now that's the one I identify with.
And how do you manage to switch between things? Like sometimes when it gets too crowded, what do you go back to make
Um,
a decision?
just to your point that you just said that you were talking about before about, when you're a startup, or in the startup phase of a growing company, is that you're getting all of this input, and then your task list can get really very long as well, and then you have all these voices and opinions, and some of it's coming from good places, but I think what you said about authenticity is really important. And I think to do that sense check on, because sometimes you can get two different pieces of advice that completely conflict with each other. And you think to yourself, well, which one do I listen to? What do I do? And I think it's always about coming back to your why and coming back to, why you're doing what you're doing, and to have something in a way, your own system to measure that advice against and feel, is this right? And our CEO definitely, we've gone through a learning curve, I think, as a team as well, in terms of how to sense check and not I think it's very, very easy when you're listening to a so-called expert or someone, a mentor, or someone with the best intention, but what happens is it pulls you in so many different directions. But in terms of coming back to, so that also sort of ties in with this switching between all of these different roles, from making a decision to having to execute a task, is I have needed to appreciate, to delegate where I can. When you're a small team, there's only so much that you can do that, and I'm still learning and growing on what I can delegate and what I feel is what's my responsibility versus what I can get support for. And also that also means externally as well. As a startup, sometimes you need to lean on external sources as well. And so that's been an interesting journey, because also you have to think about the resources that you have, financial resources as well. So I've really had to learn how to prioritize in this context of the role that I have growing a business, because every week, every month, there's something new. There is a problem to solve. There is many things going right and some things going wrong, some things within our control, some things out of control, and all to keep myself sane, I have to write everything down. I use a combination of digital and physical, and literally get everything out of my mind onto the paper, and so then I can organize it, and to always be choosing sort of like the top. Again, there's many different videos and information psychology pieces around this, but I think I just pick what are the top priorities for the day, what are the must do's, what can be done, or say like, okay, this has to be done this week, but might not need to have to be done today, and just always making sure that I just try and stay on top of it the best that I can, but also remembering honestly that I'm human. And I've definitely gone through the pitfalls of overloading myself, of trying to be a little bit too overambitious with what I can do in a day. Um, I've had to learn, because some of my days ended up being so extremely long, like going beyond into silly hours. And I said, no, this isn't sustainable. How do I make sure that I bring balance? I think sometimes when you're trying to be ambitious, you want to do more, But at the same time, we're as a team and as a company, we really advocate for mental health, looking after your health mentally, physically, spiritually as well. So to understand, as much as it's great to have something you really enjoy, to also prioritize things outside as well and make sure that it doesn't dominate 100% of your time. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think also many of us who end up in these kinds of roles, right, we are over ambitious, and we did reach, I guess, a certain point in education, in professional life as well, because we like really go hard, right? And then we need to learn how to also let go at some point, and that it doesn't mean that things would fall apart. It's just like you need to change the way you do things because you're now working with other people. And I remember one of my friends, he at some point said, because I really love being there for others, and also like I get myself involved also with like even different projects, and before when I was working with teams, like maybe it's not needed, right? And he said, like, you love to help others, right? How does that feel? I'm like, it feels really good, and I really enjoy that, and I love building these relationships with people through it as well. And he was like, yes, but when you need help, you don't ask for it, right? And I said, yeah, you know me well.
Yeah.
And then he said,
I can resonate a lot with that.
yeah, and he said, so why don't you offer someone else an opportunity to feel the way you feel when
Exactly.
you help? And that was this switch in me that I go to when I feel bad about not doing something or delegating something. It's that reminder, right? And yeah, we do self mastery through this
Yes,
journey as
yes,
well.
for sure, for sure. No, I resonate with that a lot, and I think many people, I think it's very, very common, and I think, you know, it's the it's that inclination of being being able to go, oh, I want to give, but you also have to learn how to receive. And I think a lot of us, um, especially women, perhaps we take on that caregiving role. We definitely, we want to give. We like to take care of others. We like to participate, and but to receive it on the other end was an interesting journey for me as well, because I don't know, for some reason I just felt, it was almost wrong for me to ask for help, or I should be able to deal with this. It's fine, I can handle it. But just like you said, it was that mindset shift of, well, wait a minute, I have to give someone else the opportunity to offer and give, because it gives satisfaction. As much as I get satisfaction, I have to do that. And it means, and also understanding that I don't think of any less of anyone when they ask for help. So why do I think of myself that way? And I really had to learn, because otherwise it will be to our detriment. It will harm us in the end, and you burn out in the end. And then you have to then take time out. You then have to heal and then come back. So I implore people to definitely give and receive, because it brings a much better balance to day life.
Yeah, I mean, it is a different form of isolation, right? And like we need in life, like physically, a community, I think it's a similar journey, right? When you delegate and share a certain project, the outcome, right? Through that, there's bonding, and through that, there are these good chemicals that are exchanged that makes it worthwhile, and you recover faster also from the work you do and the stress maybe that it brings as well.
Yes, it's that whole sharing the load. Share the
Yeah.
load. You don't have to carry it all yourself. Yeah.
Yes. And what is, let's say, is there any fun experience that you've had ever since you joined the industry?
Oh my gosh, I have
The first one
the
that,
first one. I have to say the first one was when I was shown the innovation projects that, or the innovative projects I should say, that the company had worked on, because it's been my first time to interact with real technology, and in the maritime space as well, and like fueling stations. I mean, if you told me 10 years ago, Hasina, you're going to be running, help running a company that builds and operates fueling stations for heavy duty transport, I would have turned around to you and I said, that's ridiculous. No, it was the first time I saw. So I had seen the drawing. So our CEO, he's an engineer by vocation as well, and he designed it. But then when I saw that in real life we actually did a soft launch at the COP26 climate change conference, and I saw it there in person, and I was just like, wow, that for me was the moment. It just felt like a real kind of wow moment, and just was like very, very memorable. Still to this day, I can remember every detail of that event, of the interaction that we were having with people. I think that's the thing, is when you see something from concept to reality, in real life, and then seeing how people are interacting with it and engaging with you, I think that really just gave us a real boost to just go, okay, we're on the right path, and let's keep going, because sometimes, when you're working on innovation, it can be, you're very much, obviously you're looking at the market, but you're being self-driven. There's a lot of drive. So when you put it out there, that's when everyone's holding their breath, and you're just like, oh, okay. But I think just seeing that, I felt very, very proud of the company, and just very humbled to be part of it. I think, yeah, that was definitely a special memory.
And for those who may not know, what is the company?
Oh, yes. Okay. So Unitrove, our mission is to deliver clean fuels conveniently. So essentially what we're trying to do is reinvent the fueling stations that are for bunkering, to make them portable, modular. You can see that on our the website, the press release, etc., to actually see the model, because we want to make it doesn't need to be, when I think people think of a fueling station, you think of probably everyday people will probably think of like a petrol station, it's big, or, on the ports, it's these massive infrastructures that are, fixed to the ground. And we have a very small portable unit that could be put on and off the back of a truck, and make it a little bit more accessible. And so we offer fueling infrastructure as a service as well, so can advise and support. And we're looking at the green hydrogen supply chain and the hydrogen economic model as well. So, so yeah, it's a very interesting space to be in right now. So yeah, so please do, for anyone listening, feel free to reach out and see what we're doing.
Yes, and then now, because it's such a hot topic as well, going back to the previous story, like seeing people have the real touch with the future,
Yeah.
it gives you, I guess, that glimpse of how it shapes up, and then it becomes real that all these small task decisions, day-to-day stuff, concepts somehow actually make impact into the world, and that's quite exciting, I guess.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I mean, so from that moment, so we've taken it back, and we're actually going to be doing a liquid hydrogen demonstration next year. So the fueling station has undergone even more changes, and we're in the build right now, and it's stressful, but in all the best ways, and just really, really exciting. And I think that's the important thing, is to remember that every day, like you said, it's all the small things that come together. And I think it's just hanging in there, because on some days you really don't know how you're going to pull it together. We all sit there and we're going, okay, especially when you hit a challenge or there is a problem, is you really need to stay calm and just go, there's a way, there's a solution, we can do this. You almost have to give yourselves pep talks and just be like, come on, we can do this. And then I think it's those moments that you remember that it is people behind the business. We talk about the industry, for example, even saying, oh, the maritime industry, but it sort of takes away the people aspect. It's people that run the industry. This is not some, this live, like it's alive. It's run by people. And it's remembering that behind every company, behind every policy, behind every regulation, it is people. And we're all in this together, and we just need to partner and collaborate and move forward and just keep going no matter what the challenges are being presented. If we really come together, just like we're sitting here right now, coming together, having conversations, connecting, anything is possible.
Yes, and I'm sure also that people who are even in the corporates, and having been one of those as well, like they too feel the same things because we're all kind of like building something in the unknown. So we're all trying our best
Exactly.
and
Yes.
figuring it out. And these emotions are also common to them. And I also remember when I was driving internal innovation in Maersk, there were some, I would take these walks early in the mornings or evenings late. And sometimes like, oh my God, how do I do this? Like, how do I bring these things together? Or like, is this the right way? And it was also like switching to that people aspect that would give me some idea, right? And then you don't know what you're doing when you're doing it, but later you realize, okay, this actually worked.
I know, I know. And I think it's important to understand that it's okay when it doesn't work. It's okay that there, especially with everything we're trying to do as an industry, it is a process and that failures will be a part of it, hiccups, delays. But what we want to do is not let those hold us back and to come together as a community to support each other. So, it is that whether you're a corporate, a startup, you work with policy, you're a regulator, you're part of the government. It's that no one knows the answer. No one does. We're trying to change the world. We're trying to change the way think that things have been done for I don't even know how long. It's beyond decades, centuries, and that is not an easy task to take on. And I think you touched upon it a little bit before on a different point, but it can feel incredibly isolating. But I think it's just to remember you're not alone, and to reach out for help, but also to find the right collaborators and partners to work with, which also can be a process. Sometimes some of those don't work out. Sometimes you will have negative experiences, but it's so important not to let that deter you, and just to remember the good in people. I know this might sound, some people might be a bit cynical, and sometimes when you look at the news and you look at the announcements and you look at what's in the media, you can become quite cynical of the industry. However, when you're within the industry, you realize that's only a very small part of it. I think by having everybody just being open-minded, and I do think we're seeing people now reaching out across from the private industry to the governments to the policies to all the different sectors, is that they're realizing that no entity can figure this out on their own. We need to come together. We need to listen. We need to collaborate. We need to be respectful as well. We need to be respectful that there's people with different ideas, be open to different ideas. And just be willing to also move at pace as well. Of course, we have, massive goals to hit and not a lot of time to do it in. So, but I think it was really interesting what you said, when you were in your previous role and you said, oh, you went to go and take a walk. And it just reminded me of, coming back to when you're, whatever role that you're doing, it's important that sometimes when it gets a bit too much, just get some fresh air, go take a walk, go and do something fun, go do something that, energizes you as well. And then often you come back and you realize whatever you were trying to figure out sort of comes in place.
It's not that big of a deal. But
yes, yeah.
yeah, even like I think, for example, when Max and I are having like discussions, or when we are solving something, let's say we hit a challenge and we're quite passionate about it, like we usually actually go for a walk to discuss it because the movement disperses that stress and pressure inside. I want to reflect back on what you said about it's okay to fail and to have challenges, right? So this is one thing that I really want that the industry does more. Like I want us to have these conference events and that companies show up with failed cases of projects, right? To build, because usually even some of the workshops are like, how might we and how can we? Yes, but I want to look back at things that didn't work. Maybe that the timing was right. Maybe we didn't have some technology that could make a change today. And to bring these archives and everyone to bring one project, be like, okay, this didn't work. Let's break it down and let's maybe work about that challenge. Because again, like looking at it from a different eye, different perspective, different moment in time with some new technology or new business model appearing, maybe that could make it work. But we don't necessarily talk about failures because I think people identify with it too much, and then they feel like it's a reflection of themselves, that outcome, but it's not, because you didn't know where it would lead you to. um, and that's again something you learn from doing research. Like it takes many times to fail and start again and try again that reaction, and then
No, definitely. And I think, and again, this isn't limited to our industry, of course, or business, or I think just on an individual basis. But I think when it comes to failure, and I think it is important to talk about it and discuss it, because sometimes it's important to understand why it failed, and perhaps, like you said, it was the timing. Even with what we're doing right now, we face some criticisms around, like, oh, you're focusing on sort of hydrogen, liquid hydrogen, but that's not the thing for now, or this, and we're like, okay, but it will have its place, and we might be a little bit ahead, for example, and there will be some trial and error. But I think this is something we embody at Unitrove, is that you have to be willing to experiment and take the risk. It's that old saying, if you want to get something different, you have to do something different. But I think around failures, it's important to bring those to the table too, because I think it's also to remember that behind every company, behind every individual, we all have failures, but I think there's a lot of shame attached to failure, and it becomes connected to our identity. And, that's an issue within society, I think, around the world. Whereas really, when you kind of think about when you were a child and you were learning how to crawl or stand, we failed multiple times before we were able to do it. But we didn't think, oh, I'm failing. We were like, oh, get back up again, try again. But obviously, as adults and as we grow, we start to associate shame with when something doesn't go right. And I think on this journey within decarbonization within the maritime industry, it is going to incorporate failures or mistakes, but I think it's really important that we don't turn a critical eye and shame that project or shame that person, because that could actually hinder progress. And it means that perhaps we shelve a project or we shelve a solution that could very well be the turning point of change. And I think it's about having a little bit of faith sometimes as well. But I do think that by all of us being able to discuss, and also from a business perspective as well, I think is that, certainly everyone who is running a startup or in business knows that there are constantly things that are coming up that have gone wrong, or, even we've experienced where, like, for example, not that gone wrong, but for example, the constant problem solving that needs to happen. And also, as an individual, we're learning within our own roles. As the company grows, for example, I will need to learn and adapt, and I probably will make mistakes along the way, but I have to learn and grow and lead by example as well. And I think myself and Stephen Liu, our CEO, we're trying to lead by example, that it's okay to fail, and that we're open to admitting when we've failed or dropped the ball or something's happened, because then that welcomes support. It welcomes that support, and it helps to deal with others also being able to do the same. Because I think when you grow a team, if you want them to be open about the mistakes they're making, which you want them to, because if you don't know something's happened and they don't feel comfortable to say, look, I've made a mistake, or this has gone wrong, or this has failed, and they see how the company is responding to it, how are they on an individual basis going to feel comfortable to come to you and say something's happened? And then it's later on you might discover it and think, oh, it becomes a bigger problem. It becomes something bigger to fix. So I think on a personal level, it's really important. And it's a journey. I'm not by no means saying that I've got it completely figured out on how to do this. But I think from an industry perspective, an individual perspective, and a business perspective, I think allowing failure and learning from it is important.
yes. And back to what you said, that sometimes people think you're too early. I do see a lot of advantage in that, because you also get a lot of knowledge with it, right? You're
Indeed.
one of the early experts in the topic, so
Yes.
you also have more tools in your toolbox to change the way and also to drive decisions from that experience, right? And that's also, I think, quite valuable considering the path that the industry is on.
Yes, I think it's continued on this whole unconventional path I seem to be on in life. I think we've definitely just, you hit the nail on the head, I think, because we're already seeing that when you're a bit of the first mover with something, and we have to reiterate that it's come off the back of experience. It's not just plucking an idea from the sky and you've just gone and just decided to do it. It's been through a really strong foundation of, okay, I'm going to use all of this and create and innovate. Is that we're actually now seeing that, just like you said, we're being seen as a bit of an expert in the space and being sought after for sort of advice or ideas, or even to comment on their ideas as well, being sought out for, oh, could you take a look at this and what do you think? So and we're definitely advocates for knowledge sharing where we can, and to support, because again, no one company is going to have all the solutions, nor should any company, one company, have that much control and power. So we want to help other people along the journey as well, and sort of, I guess it's, that saying of, you put like pay it forward, you pay it forward, and what you give back comes back to you, that type of thing as well. So it's give and take. It comes back to give and take. Yeah.
And as we call it a port, is there anything that you would like to ask me?
So I have to say, you have a very impressive career and you have a wealth of experience. And what advice would you give to either myself or give any startup or any innovator in the space?
Whew, I thank you. I don't think of myself that way, but thank you. I mean, I don't know. I didn't have necessarily a plan. Usually I have like a few pictures in my head of what I see the future to be like, and somehow I did happen in life to achieve those pictures and look back like, oh my God, I actually imagined this when I was a kid. But
That's
it's
amazing.
not that I had a plan. I was more like just driving decisions from my gut feeling, and there were I believe in these things that even when things are like repeating themselves, or it feels that you're hitting a wall, sometimes it's almost like it's kind of like pushing you towards the direction that's aligned
Yeah, it's like
to
redirection. It's steering you, steering
yes.
you.
And I always feel like there is something inside of me that's telling me what the right thing is, even when it makes no sense to anyone else.
Oh, I felt that many days. Yep.
Yeah. So
Yep.
for me, that was the recipe. I mean, I had so many conversations with my dad, even in the past. He's like, what the hell are you doing? Like, why are you doing this to yourself? But to me, it felt right. And to me, it gave me energy. And I was always very creative also when it comes to work and how I do it, and curious and okay to totally shift direction and adapt to something else. Like there was this common thread of sustainability, but I was switching industries quite a bit. And it's just because it felt right. And it made no sense to anyone else but me internally, basically.
That's amazing. And I think that's actually really incredible advice. And I resonate a lot with that too. But I think following that feeling inside, whether you want to call it gut feeling or intuition, whatever it is, but to just believe in yourself. And clearly you have, and it's steering you in a great direction. And you should feel, I think, to add to this is that we often don't think about looking back and think about what we've achieved, because we just do what we do. But I think you've achieved incredible things and you should be incredibly proud of yourself. And it's an absolute privilege to sit here with you and have this conversation with you today. So thank you for inviting me here, and it's been amazing.
Thank you. I mean, I don't know what to say. And, like, as I mentioned, I just try my best. But thank you for being my guest and
Thank you.
joining this adventurous journey.
Adventurous journey. The adventure
Yes.
continues, for sure.
Yes. And I'm so looking forward to meeting you again and
Absolutely.
again.
And again and again. Amazing.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.